Good afternoon, gentlemen. I am fired up. We are all now a part of a seminar on being a top-notch branch secretary. My name is Dick DeVoe. I'm going to be the state secretary for 2022. In fact, I am right now in 2021 because unfortunately our current state secretary passed away a week ago, and I was appointed to take his job not only until the end of this year, but until the next year too, because he had been elected for that. So it's a sad time, but I was going to do this presentation in any case, so I'm prepared to do that. I've been with SIR for over 25 years. I've been in many of the BEC branch leadership positions, including Big Sur, and I've been on the state board for 6 out of the last 9 years. So that'll give you some insight into the fact that I have some idea of what we're talking about today. I get to talk about one of the best leadership management jobs in the branch. And you'll note that I said leadership and management. Now, the first part of this presentation is a bit different than you might have expected. It focuses on the branch secretary as a branch director. So hang on, here we go. We are, and for the purposes of this seminar, let's consider ourselves all as branch secretaries. We are both a branch director and a branch secretary. The branch director is the leader part of the job, and the branch secretary is the manager part of the job. Now, being a director is a big deal. Why? Because you can focus on helping ensure your branch can be the best that it can be. You know, many of our existing branches that may have difficulties serving long-term actually manage their branch affairs quite well. In fact, most of the 60 branches that have closed, almost all of them managed their business, their administrative affairs quite well for all those years that they were declining until they closed. So this is a sobering thing to say, but it's reality. So that's where we as branch secretaries come in. We already know whether our branch has declined or has stayed the same or is increasing its membership in recent years. And we also have a feel for whether our branch focuses big time on the long term rather than on mostly managing the current short-term affairs of the branch. So if volunteering is a concern, if new activities aren't being added year after year, if keeping existing members and recruiting new ones is a branch concern, and it should be, if finding new leaders is a concern, we in this job can influence a discernible change, and even influence a sea change in the way the BEC goes about its business, depending on where we are as a branch in decline or the same or actually increasing. So bottom line, being a branch director is so important to the long-term sustainability of a branch. So now you've heard about the most important part of the job. Now you're going to hear about the branch secretary management part of the job. And it is a fabulous job. Okay, we already know that the branch secretary also acts as the corporate secretary for this 501c4 nonprofit corporation that we also call our SIR branch. That knowledge is sufficient in itself to recognize a branch secretary needs to be on top of everything administrative. But what does that really mean? And how does he do that? Well, our next slide will help us to make that happen. You'll see that we have 6 documents showing here. Only 6. If we as branch secretaries familiarized ourselves with these 6 documents, we would really be meeting our criteria of being a top-notch branch secretary. The secretary should be the administrative guru for the BEC, and that's relatively easy to do. All these references are on the CERINC.org website. And that website, from my perspective, is the secretary's best friend. Each document can even be transferred individually onto our computer desktop if we wish to do that. So the first one, the Leader's Guide. This is found on the home page to the right under the Keys to Branch Success. Now, the guide is an amazing summary of SUR subjects and issues. And it includes a plethora of subjects that every branch secretary needs to know about. For example, it gives a brief history. It gives your organizational structure from top to bottom. It defines what a healthy branch is. It talks about BEC meetings and agendas, the luncheon meeting, the RAMP toolkit with recruiting and activities and member relations and publicity. And it has a lot of other administrative information which every secretary should know. We'll discuss the SUR manual, the position descriptions, the schedule operations, and branch regulations a bit later. But I did want to say something about the forms. We hadn't mentioned that. Forms shows you essentially all the forms in play throughout SUR, and they're easily found on the homepage. One of the easy ways to do it is just click on branch info and voila, forms are on the bottom. Could we have the next slide, please? So this slide talks about the SUR manual. The SUR manual is comprised of the policies and procedures and the bylaws. The bylaws are effectively the constitution for our state SUR. Policies and procedures come from the bylaws. And in fact, we've incorporated all the bylaws into the policies and procedures. So you as a branch secretary don't even have to spend any time on the bylaws because they're already within the policies and procedures. For your information, a policy revision needs a majority vote by the state board, whereas a bylaw needs 2/3 majority of at the annual meeting of SUR, where all the big SURs and the state officers come together and vote. Now here's examples of general policies 1 to 17 that you see there. They're of interest to the branch secretary. Policy 4 talks about parliamentary procedures following the Roberts Rules of Order. Policy 5 states that the mailing address for the branch is prescribed as the secretary's home address. You may not have even known that. Policy 13 involves travel and the travel documents that the secretary maintains. Policy 15 tells us how to amend a bylaw. If your branch says, boy, we need to change that bylaw if we possibly could, at least 45 days before the next annual meeting, the branch can send to the state their recommendation for a bylaw change. And then the process goes that way. Let's talk about policy 18 to 26, which you see there is membership. Well, let's don't talk about it because that's mostly for the member relations people and the membership chairman. But it's nice for you as a branch secretary to be familiar with those. The next item is branch other, which is the policies 27 to 42. And here's a few of them for your listening pleasure. Policy 29 discusses the branch meetings. Policy 31 discusses the BEC. 39 identifies unauthorized SUR activities because they are not covered by insurance. Yikes. Policy 40 oh my gosh, I had to tell you this. This is how to remove a branch officer. Once a state board finds that they must remove a branch officer, there is a line there that says, let me see if I can find it. The branch secretary is responsible for providing the BEC's decision to the member in a timely manner. So your BEC goes ahead and removes this director, and now it's up to you as the secretary to have to tell him. But actually, it's a lot more different than that, because the branch officer probably hasn't been there for a while, and it's the secretary's job to merely make sure that he gets a registered letter through the US mail to make that official. The general policies 43 to 51 typically involve the state board, the state executive committee, state officer elections, and annual meetings, but it's good for a branch secretary to know about those things. Next slide, please. Position descriptions. Boom, 16 branch position descriptions are found on the SureInc.org website on its homepage. Again, for your viewing pleasure, you click on branch info and then branch leadership, and voila, you have all 16 branch position descriptions, which is kind of cool. Next slide, please. This is the position description summary for the secretary. So we already have talked about the fact that he acts as the director and as the secretary. He takes roll and ensures a quorum. And a quorum, of course, is the majority of the members present who are on the BEC. So you have to have 51%. If 12 are on the BEC and 7 or more attend, you have a quorum. If you don't have a quorum, then the meeting is really null and void as far as any votes are concerned. If a position is vacant on the BEC, then you don't count that in the total number of BEC members, just for your information. So you take and you distribute the meeting minutes, all right? And hopefully you distribute those within 10 days after the meeting. You'd include the area governor and the regional director in that distribution. And you would ensure that, let's go on here, ensures the schedule of operations is followed. This is very important, and we'll talk about that in a moment. He maintains the branch documents, including financial, because after all, the financial is taken care of by the treasurer. Your administrative records must be retained for 5 years. Travel must be retained for 2 years. You report on administrative items, and that's anything pertinent that's come up since the last meeting. You report BEC changes to the state on the Form 20. So anytime there's a change in the BEC and the leadership or in whether the secretary has changed, the assistant secretary has changed, this Form 20 needs to go to the state so that they can keep up with it for their roster and for correspondence. And then you respond to outside requests, outside meaning outside the SUR organization. And typically you would use a SUR letterhead, which you can find on the forms on the website. Next slide, please. Schedule of branch operations. I had mentioned that this is a key document, and it's very important because there is a column there that shows your routine duties that you do month after month. You send the BEC minutes to the AG and the RD monthly. We've already talked about that. You notify the state roster chairman of any changes to the Form 20. That's a routine that you and I already talked about. Report to the BEC monthly on correspondence received and upcoming submittals due. All right, you ensure Forms 27 and 28 are submitted monthly. These are not ones that you necessarily submit, but it's good that the branch secretary, because he's responsible for administrative things within the branch, makes sure that those are actually submitted. So before the meeting, you may talk with the person who handles or is responsible for Form 27 and Form 28. Have those actually been done? So let's go to the next slide, please. This slide talks about the branch operations involving each month particularly. So in January, it shows you notify the area governor of the records transfer to the new officers. So if there is a new officer in a particular job, then you make certain that those correspondence or those documents in electronic form or otherwise are transferred to the new officer, and you merely are reporting that to the area governors so that everybody's in sync, that's all been done. In February, you provide a membership roster to the area governor and the regional director. This is your membership roster that you would have put together for your own branch. And we're just making sure that the AGs and RDs have got that information as well, in case they need it. You email the Form 65 membership list to the state. You don't necessarily do it yourself because the membership chairman might do that, but you make sure that it's done because the state needs to have that list for their constant contact electronic distribution to all members whenever there's something that is very important for all members to receive. March through July are all the routine that we've already talked about, but in August, it's time for the next year's branch personnel leadership names to be sent to the state, and that's done on the Form 20, which we've talked about. So if you don't have everybody in place, at least send the form for those people that are in place, because you've already, as a branch, elected the people for the next year. Hopefully the Big Sur has already done some work on the chairman and the committee. Therefore, those names would be on the Form 20 as well. In October, you order the past Big Sur pin if your branch does that type of thing. And in November and December, you ensure the membership list is starting to be completed by February. So this is a big project to make sure that the membership list is complete. And typically branches should be starting in November or December to make sure that they are all up to date by the February date when it has to go to the state. Next slide, please. So here's a slide about the BEC meeting minutes. The minutes would show the attendees, the BEC member names, titles, and whether they attended. And typically what would be best done is to just have a format that's set up so that each month you do the minutes, all you have to do is put an X in the box for those BEC members who are actually attending. You then type in the other attendees and their branch titles, if they're known. They may be the membership chairman or the activities chairman or whatever. The presiding officer, who is the Big Sur typically, will call the meeting to order, and you show that. You show that a quorum is reported and it has been met. You show the minutes have been approved. The agenda is reviewed. And if anybody has any changes in the, not changes necessarily, but additions to the agenda, that would be the time to do that. Then there are reports that are given by the officers and the committee chairs, and you would report those pertinent items in the minutes. Any motions that come up during the meeting would be also recorded by you in the minutes. Not only who originated the motion, but also who seconded it, and then what the result of it was. Was it passed and was it failed? Old business, or as some are now calling unfinished business, is the next item. Then if there's any new business, you would show it. You would make sure that the next meeting is part of the minutes, and then it would show the adjournment time, and you would have your name as the person, or whoever did the minutes have their name as the one who actually authored them. So you have now earned the right to a certificate for successfully completing the seminar for becoming a top-notch secretary. Good job. Thank you. We're done.